Today I want to talk to you about ways that you can have a low maintenance vegetable garden. So one of the things that I like to do is use pots in my garden. I use them in my garden beds. It's just another way to kind of grow up. I have different kinds of herbs that I'm growing. I've got some dill, I've got some Italian parsley. So that is it's a great way to utilize space in your garden. Got some strawberries in a little pot right here. I actually have a few carnations starting to grow. Another thing I do is that I grow all of my vegetables in garden beds. This actually makes it a little bit easier when you're ready to, pull up your different vegetables and pick them and different things like that. You don't have to go to the trouble of stooping down too much. See, I've got a couple zucchinis growing here, and it just makes it very easy when I'm trying to work in the garden to have things in a bed. Another thing that I do to make for a low maintenance garden is to put up trellises. Now, I really love trellises for a number of reasons. They do give your plants some shade, but the biggest thing that I like is that it makes it very easy to pick your vegetables. So here you can see I've got quite a slew of green beans, and they're so easy to pick in here. You really just, pick your green beans, and it's a very easy process. In fact, I'll probably go through here before I start my day and start picking some beans. I've got some beans and cherry tomatoes actually growing on this trellis next to it. I've got several beans that I just picked yesterday, but you pretty much have to pick every day when you've got pole beans and green beans because they just get away from you really fast. Here I've got some spaghetti squash that's growing up the trellis. I've got several squashes on this one little trellis. Look how big this one is. Actually, I think that may be a pumpkin. But I've got a spaghetti squash right behind it. Lots and lots of squash in here. Tons of bees. I love these squash flowers. They bring a ton of bees. And of course the flowers, they always bring a ton of bees. So as you can see, everything's really kind of contained in these beds. It just makes it super easy. And I put up little trellises everywhere that I can. Just makes it real easy to grow. The other thing that I do is I stake my indeterminate tomatoes. And you can see how tall these tomatoes are. They're like a good 4 feet over me. But I usually put a stake down the center of my garden bed. And then each tomato I have on its own separate stake. And I tie those up with zip ties. It actually works really good. You can see walking through the garden path that the tomatoes really do kind of stay where they need to be. Look how high some of those are. Oh my gosh, they're almost as high as my trellis where you walk in. It's amazing. I've got tomatoes over here. Here I have a lot of tomatoes on these vines. These other ones are still setting tomatoes. This one's got a lot of tomatoes already. Look at that spider. You see him? And so I'm going to have a ton of tomatoes from this garden. Look at all those. Another thing that I do is I have all of my plants on a drip irrigation. Now these are really nice. They're just those little low flow drips, and I can put them anywhere that I want along my plants. You can move them, from area to area. They work really nice. And these are actually on a timer, so I can water more or less depending on the weather. Here you can see I've got peppers that are all staked up. Now I need to actually tie some of these because when I set these originally, they were so tiny that I didn't really need to tie them to anything. But I noticed that some of these are getting pretty big, so I'll probably just stake those. Looks like I've got some jalapeno peppers in that particular plant. I've got some Jimmy Nardellos growing on that one. The rest should be California Wonder, the big green peppers. So I've got about 10 pepper plants. As I said, they're just all staked. They're all on their own drip irrigation, which helps make for a really great, oh, there's some peppers starting to grow, some California Wonders. There you go. The other thing I know you can't see is that in each of my beds, I actually have a wire mesh. It's a really fine wire mesh that's actually nailed to the wood all the way around my beds to keep critters out. Now, I do get gophers, but I get them all along the outside of my area here. So I don't really worry about them. They don't get into the garden. I did have a problem for a couple years, but since I've had that, steel mesh down, I haven't had any problems with gophers. So those are some of the things that I'm currently doing. And then I just want to show you real quick. This is my lime basil. I'm actually going to be picking some of this and I'm going to dehydrate it. I've never grown lime basil before. Did want to smell it. Ooh, that smells good. Ooh, wow. Yes, I'm going to be working on that today. But I've got, how dare he? I've got a tomato bug on my dill. Maybe that's not a, oh, I've got a couple of them. Goodness gracious. Well, I'll have to deal with that. Wonder if I've got it on another dill here. And there's a big bed of dill here. So these are real easy to get rid of. I'm just going to pick them off and throw them away. And although I'm not doing it now, I did want to talk about something that will really help me next year. So this dirt right here, this is just dirt in between my beds. It does accumulate a lot of weeds. It's kind of a pain in the neck to keep up and try to keep the weeds down. So I am going to be having rock put down and pavers over some heavy duty landscape fabric for next season. That's my goal. When it's cool in the winter, my son and I are going to put all of this down, and it is just going to make a huge difference in my garden as far as maintenance. I'll just really be maintaining the beds instead of the whole grounds. Now I could do mulch. There's really no purpose to do that in my garden here just because I don't grow anything on these beds I walk on, and they're pretty big. So I have rocks and pavers around my fruit trees and it works out really good. So I decided I'm going to do the same thing with my garden beds. Next year it'll be a huge difference. I can't wait for you to see it. So thank you for joining me in the garden today. I hope that this gives you some ideas to have a low maintenance garden. Hope you're enjoying the season as much as I am. And if you're not a subscriber, please consider subscribing to my channel. Give me a like, a thumbs up, or ring the bell for future notifications. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.